this is the surface level. A lot of people, Scott, and we see tons of people making this mistake, is they say, oh, I'm getting a great click-through rate. Nothing could possibly be wrong. But what I'm seeing when I see that is 108 clicks. That means we should have at least one sale from it, right? And that's on the low end. And I'd really rather see 2 to 4 sales in this click rate.
All right, so we are going to dive into an Etsy ads review that was submitted by one of our students. So Chris, if you could pull that up right now and we can go ahead and listen to the video, listen to what is happening, and hopefully we can give some insight, give some advice, maybe see what the heck's going on here.
So Scott, the first thing, before I even hit play on this, am I the only person, let us know in the comments, that is having a little bit of anxiety based on the number of tabs that are open at the top of the screen share? No shade. I'm not saying that's the problem with your Etsy ads, but that's the very first thing that I noticed before we even watched this video. It gives me a little bit of a heart attack. I'd never be able to find anything, and I'd be the one closing the thing that I'm trying to open. But with that being said, let's dive in and hear what the feedback is and see if we can dive to the bottom of that.
I'm going to work through some issues on my site. I've made a couple $100 overall, but I've put a lot more into Etsy ads and other things than I've gotten any returns out of. I did post a while back, kind of showing a picture of some of the research. So basically, here's what I found. I have a D&D niche. So this is my main shirt that I was advertising to. The reason I picked it is because it was by far getting the most traffic and the most clicks and a lot of favorites, but people aren't buying it. And so these are my analytics here for the last 30 days.
Hey,
before we dive
I was going to say, pause right there.
I wanted to get your feedback, because one of the things that we talk about in terms of optimizing Etsy ads is really understanding the foundation, setting the foundation for that listing optimization.
Yep.
Obviously, the one thing that really stood out to me was he said, I'm set up to collect some emails. Great place to start. But just based on what you saw on that previous page, does he have good thumbnails? Is that video something that would attract attention? Like, just looking at the listings really fast before we dive into the data, is the foundation here set in terms of visual appeal and all of that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. No, I mean, very first thing is it's very generic, and what I mean by generic is like you're looking at a t-shirt that's on a wood background or, wood plank background. And it's basically, the same as everyone else that they're doing out there. I think part of the reason, now we're going to look at the clicks and stuff like that, but I think the part of the reason it's not converting is I think it also doesn't show it on someone. And I think that's a conversion piece that a lot of people miss, is people want to see it as if it's being used. Okay. So I think, to your point, Chris, I think that the mock-up could be done a lot better, so it shows an actual person, and it doesn't even have to show the full face. It could just, you've seen them before where it shows like from the nose down, but it just, to me, it needs to stand out better as far as if someone's scrolling, they're seeing it's kind of in competition with all of the other black t-shirts. Like, there's nothing that's making it stand out to me.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I like that is going on is the designs look good, they look clean. Yep. I like that we're using video, and using video at all is like step one of this process, right? Then we can get into some of the nitty gritty. He's probably ahead of a lot of the competitors in terms of the fact that there's a video at all on that top selling listing. Yep. The question is there a better way for us to optimize that? And we'll start to learn that as we do a little bit of a deeper dive into the data. So let's let him share that with us.
Yeah.
Let's see, I can go even further. Let's do.
Hey, Chris, pause again real quick though. Can you go back? I just wanted to see those numbers real quick again. Yeah. Okay, cool. Right there. That's fine. If we're looking at, so I want people to understand, like if we're looking at views and clicks, okay, he's got a very strong view and click. And you can see a 2.1, okay, 2.1% click-through rate. Chris, is that good or bad?
Yeah, I would want to see a minimum of that 1% click-through rate, which we see in that second listing there.
Yep.
2.1 is great. And that is I believe that's the listing we just saw at the store view that has the video as the main image, right? Yep. So that is going to be a reason that we're going to get a click-through rate. Now, this is not the end all be all. And as we start to dive into the data, we'll really start to understand this a little better. This is the surface level. A lot of people, Scott, and we see tons of people making this mistake, is they say, oh, I'm getting a great click-through rate. Nothing could possibly be wrong.
Yep.
But what I'm seeing when I see that is 108 clicks. That means we should have at least one sale from,
Yes.
right? And that's on the low end. And
Yep.
I'd really rather see 2 to 4 sales in this click range. What that immediately says to me, and I'm sure it says something similar to you, is that there's either a conversion rate problem on the listing, or those clicks aren't coming from a place that makes a lot of sense for our listing. And if we're just getting started in Etsy ads, it's usually problem 2, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of keywords or junk traffic coming in because Etsy's still trying to figure out exactly who we should be getting along with.
So January to now, I turned the ads off for a while. I guess this is basically all those. And so you can see I got about 5,000 views. Actually, I think that's just in March. You can see up here,
which is a lot.
Let's do this year. So this year I've gotten about 8,000 total. The majority of those views, I guess I can just do that on here too, right? This year. Okay. So the majority of those views are on this one rule of cool D&D shirt, which I can do. It's not against the rules or anything like that. And then I also have this D&D/Christian shirt, which is Jesus is my cleric, which is just making a joke about Jesus. And then also like a cleric is a healing class in D&D. So I've gotten a few sales overall from these, but just not many. Lifetime orders 3, right? So I'm trying to figure out what to do about that. So
hey, real quick, I wanted to give you a little behind the scenes on how these Etsy shop audits even happen. Every single month, Chris Schaefer and I, we meet and we batch record 3 to 4 of these episodes. Then they get edited and they get posted like the one you're watching right now. But what we decided to do is create what we call our Backstage Pass Club. This is where all of our club members, they get to join us on that recording as we're doing it live. The other cool thing is you're able to ask questions, and you also can get access to the recordings before they ever air, immediately, raw and unedited. You even get all the questions that were asked that you might have missed because, well, maybe you couldn't attend that one live. So if you'd like to be part of our Backstage Pass Club and join our next batch recording session, head on over to brandcreators.com/club or click the link in the description. Now, let's get back to the art.
I have a ton of keywords, and as I went through them, like...
Yeah, we want to see this here. So, okay. And someone had said in the comments too, skirting on trademark. What's the deal with Dungeons and Dragons? You and I talked about this before because I said the same thing one time, and then you were like, no, there's actually a thing that they can do it. Like they give them permission, which is shocking to me.
So just proof that I have weird knowledge about random things for no reason.
You do.
That actually happened to come up when D&D changed their licensing.
Okay.
So they used to be basically a completely open license. And then a few months back, as of the time of recording this, they went to a license where it was basically open, but up to a certain dollar amount. And then they went back and they changed it again. But D&D is one of those rare cases where, yes, technically it's trademarked, right? It is a game, but it is something that inside of the licensing for the use of that, they allow the community to create merchandise, to create lore, to create a bunch of different things for the community, because what they've realized over time is that by letting people do that in an open way, it brings in more players to the D&D universe, and then they sell more of the official D&D stuff, right? D&D is just short for Dungeons and Dragons, right? So this is a weird edge case. If he was selling Disney t-shirts or like Goofy t-shirts, it would be different, or Star Wars, right? But in the case of D&D, they have a different licensing structure than most people who have trademarks, copyrights, all of those.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to clear that up. Okay, so we're looking at this now. So we look at the clicks that he is getting. It looks like Dungeons and Dragons, 117, right? Or is that views?
So that should be views. Let me go back here a couple seconds.
Yeah.
So it's views, clicks, orders. So
okay.
Scott, the very first thing that I see here, and this is an example of something where this keyword could be good or it could be a poison pill, right?
Yeah.
This is something somebody typing in Dungeons and Dragons has a chance of buying his t-shirt because it's Dungeons and Dragons related.
Yep.
However, is it relevant enough to a specific t-shirt in this shop that it's likely to result in sales. I'm curious about your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think personally, you're right. Okay, I don't know if we've had enough data, but I would say Dungeons and Dragons is very specific, but it's so broad. It's like it could be Dungeons and Dragons, a case for the game, right? It could be a sweatshirt that someone was looking for, or maybe it was a decoration, or maybe it was a gift for someone, right? And yes, you could say that could be it. But if we're advertising, we need to make sure that that thing that is being searched for is really, really close to what we have to offer. Because like you said, someone could be curious. They're not really interested. They saw it. They thought it was cool. I'll click on it. It cost you those 3 clicks, but it didn't result in a sale. And that's because it was just a little bit too broad. So I'm not sure if I would turn it off yet, because we haven't had enough data, but that is something I'd keep an eye on.
And the reason that I bring this up specifically is because the example that you and I give is somebody who sells custom wooden signs.
Yeah.
Right? If they had the word wood here, we
Yeah.
would turn that off, because that is, yes, it is relevant to the niche. But that's like saying we sell bass fishing stuff and somebody typed in the word fish into the Etsy search, right? They could mean they want to buy fish for dinner. They could mean they want pet fish. They could mean, there's a million different things that they could mean. And especially in the case of something like Dungeons and Dragons, where there's figurines, there's custom dye, there's all of these kinds of things. It's probably not where we want to see those impressions coming from. I'd rather see the longer tail variation of that. That would be Dungeons and Dragons shirt. I'd be very comfortable with that keyword, right? So the way to figure this out, if we're not sure about to turn this on or off, is to type that in to Etsy and see what comes back. If they're showing us a wide variety of terms, right? They're showing us some t-shirts, they're showing us some of those things, I'd leave it on for now. But if Etsy and their algorithm says when somebody types this in, what they're really looking for are dice for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
You'll see that in the search results. The vast majority of the organic traffic will be directed towards those results, because Etsy's goal is to drive people towards the products that they're the most likely to purchase. And so if that's the case, then we'll start to see that reflected in the search results. If they just don't know, then we can leave it on for a little bit and start to figure it out ourselves on the back end. If it's very obvious that it's not our product, then I would come in kind of right away and turn it off.
Okay, cool. Let's keep going.
So I have a ton of keywords, and as I went through them,
so that perfect example, D&D shirt right underneath that, right? 80 impressions, 1 click. That's what I would want to see.
That's what I want to see.
Keyword pruning, like you guys were talking about. The majority of these keywords all make sense as far as like they're all D&D related.
They make sense, but they don't specifically make sense for the exact product. That's where we have to be careful. So I just wanted to say that, like, in his head right away, he's like, no, these all make sense. It says D&D. Like it is, but in reality, it might be not specific enough when we're advertising.
Perfect example, and I'm highlighting my screen like y'all can see my mouse. I guess if I bring it over here, you can. D&D stickers, right?
Yep.
Obviously not a D&D t-shirt related to D&D. Yes. A potential buyer. Yes.
Yep.
But a waste of that ad spend if they're clicking. Now, in this case, they're not clicking on that. We're getting a few impressions, but that would be something I would want to turn off. And then if we see something like Paladin, which is typically a class in role-playing games, right? RPG, yes, this relates to RPG, but again, probably too broad. TTRPG, tabletop role-playing game, right? Dungeons and Dragons, technically a tabletop role-playing game. So it is relevant to our niche, but not relevant to the product. And if we want to optimize our spend, we need to be really careful with how broad we let those terms go.
The majority of these keywords all make sense as far as like they're all D&D related keywords and things that I think, like if someone was going to D&D stickers, they might also want a shirt. Kind of thinking from a point of view of like a brand, or the same kind of market might want the same sort of stuff. So there's nothing in here that super stands out to me as weird. Like even RPG shirt, I don't know why I turned that off. Yeah, so like Dimension 420 is a tabletop RPG show. D&D Sorcerer, tabletop RPG. Like these are all role-playing. Crawler Carl. I have no idea what Dungeon Crawler Carl is, but it sounds like it could be similar. Mighty Neen is another tabletop RPG show. This is a character from a tabletop game. So it's all related.
Okay, so I wanted to just make this point again. Just because it's related doesn't mean we should leave it.
Exactly.
Now, the cool thing that we can do with this data is we now know that there's some interest in whatever Mork Borg is. What was it? Dungeon Crawler Carl. As long as that's something that's not trademarked, we can use these as potential product ideas, but this is not what we want to see at the product level in our ads data. Now, granted, not a lot of these have clicks, so we don't need to be hyper worried about turning them off. But if we can turn off the irrelevant stuff, it does help Etsy really understand this is not a TTRPG shirt. This is a Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master shirt, or whatever the specific thing is. And so we do want to come in and trim some of these really obvious ones out. Don't discard the ideas, but make sure that if it is relevant, that you kind of put them in your back pocket to think about, is there a way I can incorporate this into my store? Because it is niche related. And this is a great place to find additional niche related ideas, just not very relevant to this product.
So one thing I want to just highlight here too, is that the good news is you're indexed for all these keywords. That's a good thing. Okay. It just means that you don't want to show up so much for paid advertising. Do you want to, what I would say, I don't want people that are searching for Dungeons and Dragons to come over and see my listing. No, yeah, come on over. Like, that's fine. But do I want to pay for it? Maybe not, because they're not really looking for a shirt. Just because it's related, okay? Fish is related to bass fishing, but if someone's looking for a bass fishing gift, I don't want to show up for fish, okay? But do I want to show up for fish if someone's searching for that organically? Sure. So this is a good way also to kind of test your listing against the Etsy algorithm to see what you are actually being indexed for. So I just wanted to kind of make that point.
But I'm getting like, okay, click-through rates, so here on 100 views in the last,
that is good.
Sense. It should be.
Yeah, that's not an okay click-through rate, just to clarify. That's a great click-through rate.
Yeah.
The problem is it's probably too generic for this product, but it tells us that there is demand there and there's definitely interest in his product.
A lot higher than that, but maybe just this keyword, it came up 117 times and it got 3 clicks. It's calling that high. I don't know why. So, yeah, any ideas you guys have, I can show you the listing too, which might help. So if you click through, I have a video, because
I
was told that.
So yeah, I mean, just going back to my first initial point is, the shirt is very generic. I would want it to really represent the player, right? The person that is there. So almost like having that player, is it male? Is it someone that's in their 30s and their 40s? Like, that's what I would want to see. And even on the background, I would want it to represent maybe a little bit of a moodier feel or something, because, maybe that's the feel. So you almost want to match that with that. So, is it okay? Yes. But I'm even looking at it like the tag is drawing my attention there, right? Like I'm like looking at it, I'm like, oh, it's a tag in the back of the shirt. Like, so this here, I think, needs a human in it. It needs to be a mock-up that is better than this, personally.
So Scott, you see some of the supporting images here.
Yeah.
Would you rather see one of those? Even
totally.
This last one here. Let me see if I can get my mouse.
Yeah, we can't really click on
this one.
Yeah,
where
we can't click
on. Because this is a video, right?
Yeah, we're in a video
where it looks like he's throwing dice or something like that, right?
Totally.
He's playing D&D. It's not a distraction. We can have this image as a backup image if they want to see the entire t-shirt laid out. Cool, totally fine. Would I go into Canva, Photoshop, get rid of that tag? Probably, because I had the same issue as you. I'm like, what is that? It may, it may look a little different if we were looking at the actual listing, but that's the thing that immediately drew my eye. So I don't necessarily see a problem with the design, although, again, it's going to depend on what this particular niche is looking for. Definition shirts sell in other niches, so there's no reason you wouldn't be able to sell it here. The question is it relevant to the traffic that's coming in? And will everybody who's searching Dungeons and Dragons on Etsy understand or care about the rule of cool? And that's the thing that we have to try to figure out.
Works well. I feel like my keywords make sense. Nothing to me stands out as really weird. Maybe the shipping is too long. I mean, what's that? That's like, but it's print on demand. I don't know. Maybe there's a way to get faster, or I can only show the faster shipping. I have a few reviews. I also So I chose this because when I looked at the t-shirts that had in the RPG niche that had the most sales, they tend to have like a very simple.
I love that he's giving us that reason. Right?
Yeah, no, it's great.
And this is a good place to start. And I don't want to totally step on what he's saying, but I have a feeling what he's going to say here is that the reason he chose this is a lot of the other definitional type t-shirts, that's what they're using. Again, great place to start, but what does the data tell us?
Yeah.
Full background. So I went ahead and with that. I have size charts. I have some lifestyle pics, men and women, different colors, everything.
Man, those are so much better to me.
Kind of layout. And then I even put the
cool. Okay.
some of my reviews right in there. And
Perfect.
then again, I have the 25.
Great.
So Scott, taking a look at this, it seems like his biggest concern is he thinks there's a conversion rate issue on this listing. Based on what we've seen so far, is this just a volume of traffic issue, 2, a relevant traffic issue, or 3, likely to be a conversion rate issue, meaning we're getting traffic, that traffic is relevant, and there's something wrong with the listing itself?
Yeah, no, I honestly, like, I wouldn't even probably be concerned too much with the listing itself. That conversion rate is pretty good for even being that mock-up, but I would want that mock-up to be like one of those lifestyle shots that they had there. But I don't think so. We got a sale running. He already has that running. Okay. I mean, the title looks fine. The only thing I might want to add in there is like, D&D player gift, maybe, even though it's player gift and then D&D, like, I don't know. But other than that, I'm just looking at like, we don't have the right targeted traffic, right? We need more of that. So I think it's a volume play. We need to get more of that. Probably got to give it more time, but we also, I think, need to make sure that we have the right people that are searching for D&D gift for player. Like, that's the keyword we want. Now, I know you can't manually set that, but you can put that in a tag. You can put it in your description. You can put it in the title. Maybe that's the title. So that's what I don't think it's a conversion problem on the listing itself as of right now. Everything else looks really good. I think it's more of the traffic is not the right traffic yet.
I think we're somewhere between number 1 and number 2 there, right? Volume of traffic and relevance of traffic before we get into the conversion rate. And I think maybe making a few title changes here may help us with that. And the reason that I say that is we're using a lot of industry insider terminology, a lot of acronyms. People who are into TTRPGs know what TTRPGs are, and they would use that abbreviation. The question I would have is, would someone who knows that their son-in-law plays Dungeons and Dragons, would they know what a DM is? Scott, do you know what a DM is?
I have no idea.
Right? And so if you were going to type this in, you would probably type out gifts for people who like Dungeons and Dragons, or t-shirt for, Dungeons and Dragons t-shirt, something like that. They're not necessarily going to use the industry specific term, which is DM, right? That's the dungeon master.
Yeah.
Right. And so by including that, it's not wrong to include that. The question in my mind is it better to include that now or further in the listing, maybe in a tag where it's not as relevant, and use the more spelled out terms that people who are buying something for people in the niche, but people who aren't 19 levels deep in the niche would necessarily use. And I think that may be a small use case, and it may or may not affect traffic. But I think, at least in this case, and Scott, I want your opinion on this, I would probably err on the side of using the spelled out version and then including the abbreviations somewhere else, either in the description or in supporting tags, or maybe at the end of the title. But I would probably lead with, Dungeons and Dragons, cool, rule of cool t-shirt, right? And then add in some of those supporting ones. I'm curious of what your thoughts are on that.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I think it comes down to the traffic. It's a little bit of a combination, but like, I think the traffic coming in needs to be more specific. And again, that just might be, like you said, tweaking the title, adding some things in the tags that might be missing that are more direct, and starting to train the algorithm, the Etsy ads algorithm, by you turning stuff off and kind of training it that way. So that's what I think here, Chris. I don't think we need to actually, I think he was just wrapping up the video, just asking if we had any suggestions. I think those are our suggestions. And I think this is a really good case of people that they think that because a keyword is related, that it's a good keyword. And in organic, I would agree. But if you're paying for it, that's where you need to start dialing things in. You really, really need to start dialing things in and really looking at the data. And if you're not yet looking at your keywords that are driving traffic, that's one thing you need to start paying attention to. Now, I would say the other example here that was pretty cool for us to be able to share this is like the numbers as far as the demand is there. So that's something that we also look at. That's there. We also look at another positive thing, and that is, well, it looks like the listing is being indexed for all of these keywords. Yes, they're related. That's good, right? Because that tells Etsy that this listing is about this topic, and that's good for organic. But for paid, we want to make sure that we're honing in and we're really fine tuning it. And the one thing I would say too is just because we're saying that that image wouldn't be the image that we would choose, you would want to test it. You've already ran that. That's fine. Now you might just want to switch it out with the other one and let it run for the same period of time with the same amount of views and see if you get more clicks. And then from there, you can say, okay, instead of getting 3 clicks, we got 6 clicks. Okay, it worked. But the one thing there is to make sure that you let it run its course. All right. So I want to just say, I think these are great. Let me know in the comments, was this helpful? Was this useful? Us doing these, because we might do more of these in the future. And if you would like to download our Etsy ads guide for free, by the way, just put ads in the comments and we'll make sure that we get you a copy. All right. So hopefully this has helped you. Chris, anything else you want to add? I know we got questions. We got another thing we got to address here. Anything else you want to end with?
Yeah, no, Elysian said, don't worry. If someone has a dungeon master in their family, they'll make sure everyone else knows he is one. So apparently, Scott, D&D is like having a vegan or a carnivore in your family. They are going to tell you, or somebody who does CrossFit, right? They're going to tell you that that is what they're doing, and they are going to make sure that you are aware of all of the terminology.
Yeah.
That may be practically the way that happens, but I would always err on the side of making things as obvious as possible for the non-D&D people. I think the other thing that really stood out to me, Scott, is a lot of people in the comments are saying this is a great niche, but there's a lot of ancillary things. There's a lot of shoulder niches to this that we could expand out into, whether it's other tabletop games, whether it's nerd culture in general, to make sure that we're capturing the most demand. And if people are into some of those other tabletop games, the likelihood that they're into something like D&D is pretty high. And so if there's more demand for those things, then we can add those in. And one great way to know is to go back to that data that we were just looking at, that click-through data, look at some of the keywords that aren't necessarily relevant to the D&D rule of cool product and see if there's some additional ideas that spark from that. We saw a lot of good examples of that. And if you guys are looking for a way to expand your product library, great way to do that is by looking at what is irrelevant traffic to a particular product, but is obviously related in some way enough that Etsy's saying, hey, yeah, you probably might want to get some clicks from me, right? We're going to turn it off for that product, but Etsy thinks that it's related enough that it's likely to be in the same niche, at least worth taking a look at.
So that's a wrap for this Etsy shop audit. But if you want to watch more, well, you can find some more right here. And if you do, well, I'll see you there.